Kip, what's up, brother? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, man.
Are you representing Echo? Is that an Echo shirt or an Epsilon shirt? That's an Echo shirt, right?
Yeah, can I still wear these if I'm not on the teams? Like all the guys in Iron Council will be upset that I'm not.
That's up to them.
Here's the
I
deal.
can't make that
You guys,
decision.
you guys send me a shirt of your team shirts, and I'll wear them. They're
Dude,
all
you can't be
awesome.
using the podcast to solicit free shit. Come on now, man.
I'm like, how many teams do we have?
Oh, 28 or so,
That's
maybe.
20 free shirts. Yeah,
Dude, you have one for almost one for every day of the month.
done.
Free stuff for Kip. It's funny
I,
because a lot of people actually reach out to me. I don't know if they've started to reach out to you yet. They will. They want to give you their hats and their shirts and their this and their that. And look, I really appreciate it. It's just hard because I never know what strings are attached.
yeah,
What they want me to share and what they want me to promote and how they
yeah.
want me to promote it. And I have some people who are like very specific about what they want me to say. I'm like, dude, I just thought you wanted to send me a shirt because you liked what we were doing. So
Yeah, because you
I've
really
been,
supported us. Yeah,
yeah. So I've been a little bit more selective these days about, what people send me and what their angle
that's
is.
funny. Yeah, I could totally see, you get a bunch of swag and you're like, oh, that's awesome. And then all of a sudden, hey, Ryan,
Hey,
this
can
is
you?
Bob. I'm in Maine right now, man. Do you want to? And you're like, what? You're on my
Yeah.
doorstep. You want to crash? Who
I
knows?
have people who are like, who live or who visit, an hour and a half away and they'll call me at 24 hours early and they're like, hey, I'm in Portland. Can you come down here and visit? I'm like, no, that's an hour and a half from where I live. And that's tomorrow. I'm working. I mean, I appreciate you being on
There's plans.
vacation, but
Yeah,
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 look, you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, right? But you kind of do, it's kind of getting to that point a little bit, which look, bottom line here, I'm not complaining at all, but bottom line here is I really appreciate the support. Everybody's bought into what we're doing and it's very cool to see. I'm excited about where we're going and the
yeah.
trajectory of what we've seen.
A little bit of a sign of success
It is. It's
probably comes
just
with it. Yeah,
it is, but it's also, here's a pretty good lesson too, is like it's also pretty good to exercise some discernment. Not you don't need to say yes to everything. You don't need to be available to everybody. And you don't need to make other people's priorities your priorities. So, as much as you can be gracious and excited about what people offer, you still have to be protective of your own time so that you can continue to do what it is you want to do, whether it's doing this podcast or being
yep.
engaged with your family or any number of priorities that you have. If you say yes to something else, then something else has to give, and usually it's a priority of yours. So you be as protective as you need to be to make sure everybody gets served to the best of your ability, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, totally. I liked this on today's pod or yesterday's podcast with the founder of GoRuck. He said,
Yeah,
show
Jason.
me. He said, show me a guy's calendar, and you'll show me his priority or whatever.
Yeah, I think he said his calendar and his bank account, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. Right.
yeah,
So everybody
yeah. And
talks about my family, they're the most important thing. And then you look at your
yeah,
calendar, there's never been a family vacation. You look at their expenses and
yeah,
it's all on, booze and their own activities and hunting trips. And it's never, like I said, a family vacation or something like that. Like, okay, well, you say that's your
yeah,
priority, but I don't know if that really
yeah.
is.
Well, and I like the idea, at least from my perspective, is I'm intentional about work. Am I intentional about my family? Right? Am I
Yeah.
scheduling that time for them and making them a priority as well? Versus, oh, I have free time now. It's family time. Right?
That's actually why a lot of the reason you'll see on Instagram, the things that I post are primarily, I would say like 70 to 80% family related.
Yeah.
Because you have the Gary Vaynerchuk's of the world, and nothing against what he's doing, phenomenal stuff. But you can get all the business motivation and inspiration you need. But I think the greater risk is a man not turning back to his family, his wife, his
Totally.
kids. That's the greater risk. The
Yeah.
risk generally for a man is not that he'll overwork,
Yeah.
or excuse me, not I should say the greater risk for a man is not that he'll underwork, it's that he'll underperform at home. That's the greater
Yeah.
risk.
Well, and that's the greater risk of regret, I think, in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah, I mean,
We
look
dropped
at
that
look at
ball.
yeah,
Yeah. Go
look at
ahead.
people on their deathbed. Like
Yeah.
what do they say? They don't say, "Oh, I wish I would have worked a few more hours," or "I wish I would have put Saturdays in at work." Like, I wish I would have made it to my son's baseball game or my daughter's dance recital, or, just spent a little bit more time on my wife. Or even guys who are going through separations and divorces, they aren't saying, man, I just didn't work enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
They're like, I just didn't pay her enough attention. So you don't look, a lot of people say, and I've had questions like this. They'll say, at what point did you change? And for me, and I think probably you, Kip, as well, when do you begin to change? When the pain of what you're experiencing is greater than the pain of changing. So for me, it was hitting rock bottom with my wife and going through our separation. And it was quite literally the darkest, most miserable time in my life. And that's when I began to change. But look, guys, you're listening to this. You don't need to wait for that to happen. Just please, if anything, look here, this is a weird thing to say, but look at me as a time traveler. Kip, look at you as a time traveler, okay? You and I have made plenty of mistakes, business mistakes, personal mistakes, relational mistakes, plenty of mistakes. And guys, if you follow in our footsteps, you're going to find yourself in the same position. We are your future. So you can either say, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to do what he does and fall into the same pit, or you're going to say, oh yeah, that was stupid. I'm not going to step there. And so you don't have to learn from your mistakes. In fact, you should be learning from our mistakes. That's why we do this podcast. It's like, here's where we effed up. Don't do that. Too many of you, though, unfortunately, will not believe us, and you'll step into the same trap. And because you want to feel the pain or something, I don't know, but or you're stubborn, or you're driven by ego. Yeah,
totally. Or if you don't mind me adding to that distinction, I don't think it's don't believe us. It's you think your scenario is unique.
That's interesting.
Yeah, my situation.
Nobody's ever dealt with
it's not exactly. Yeah. It's the phrase I love. It's like those despair posters. You have all these snowflakes falling. It says, "Remember, you're unique, just like everyone else."
Right.
And it's the truth. We think, "Oh, my situation's unique." You're like, actually, not really. Yeah. Right. Like it's very simple still. Right.
I mean, look, based on our conversations we've had, there's 6 categories, maybe. I'm just kind of throwing that out as an arbitrary number. There's half a dozen categories that men's problems fall into. They're not disciplined. And there's a lot of different words for that. Consistency, lazy, whatever. But discipline.
Yeah.
Okay, that's number 1.
Yeah.
Right. Procrastination. Sure. They have marital problems. So they're not engaged with their wife to the degree that they want. They lack confidence, which means they're not doing the work. That could actually go back to discipline. They're not doing the work they know they should be doing. They have fitness issues, consistency. I mean, it's all coming back to discipline.
Yeah.
If you were disciplined, and I would say not only discipline, but the integrity gap that we've talked a lot about, right?
Yeah.
Look, you and I, Kip, we're not some amazing prophets that are disclosing information. Well, I'll speak for myself. Sorry, I don't want to speak for you.
Oh, okay.
I'm not an amazing prophet that is going to disclose any information that you're not already aware of. Sorry, guys. If that's what you're looking for, probably don't subscribe to the podcast.
Well, and that's what truth looks like.
Banging you over the head with the proverbial hammer until you finally get it. And if I can't get it done, then life is going to kick you in the dick and do it for you. Or you could just listen and say, oh, yeah, Ryan stepped into that pitfall and he said, don't do that, so maybe I should not do that.
Totally. Yeah.
All right. There's our complimentary.
Let's wrap up.
We're done. That's all you need to know. Just be disciplined, guys. Just do it.
And if you don't have discipline, just get this, and it's discipline in a can.
That better be water in there, Kip. It better be water in there.
Artificial discipline.
Let's give a shout out to Origin. All right, we'll talk about Origin for sure. They did that. And then let's give a shout out to JP Donnell, my good friend JP Donnell. All right, look, I think there's 6 flavors, 5 or 6 Discipline Go flavors from Origin at this point, or technically Jocko Fuels, which is a division of Origin. JP's is the best, man. Sour
for sure.
Apple
for
Sniper.
Sure.
It's the best. Jocko Palmer, whatever. I don't even know what their other flavors are because it just doesn't matter. Sour Apple Sniper is the way to go.
Sour Apple Sniper. Yeah. Physical cognitive force multiplier.
They're great marketers. They are great marketers.
And I love all of it. It's so funny. One is Tropic Thunder, I think. One flavor is called Tropic
Jocko
Thunder.
Palmer, Dax Savage. It's funny because guys are like, Jocko doesn't care how he looks. Really? Really?
Yeah. The can is black.
They know.
Yeah,
they know marketing. All right. Every Monday when he does his Instagram post, he gets in a little dark room and he looks off to the side like this, and then he looks at the camera.
Slight light onto his face.
You're telling me he doesn't know what he's doing? Come on, the man knows what he's doing. And I'm not dissing him. I'm saying he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's crafty. No,
so
this is the best flavor.
I will disclose. I will disclose, and maybe Pete and Brian will be upset about this, but so I don't even know if they listen to the podcast, so we'll find out. All right. There's a new I know you do because you just told me about yesterday's episode.
Hey, I got to stay up on top of the times, man.
There's a new flavor they're working. A couple new ones. One I'll disclose, one I won't. I think they're working on one from Good Deal Dave Burke, if you guys aren't familiar with him, Top Gun instructor, all around badass. I think it's called, what do they call it? Something like Afterburner Orange or some orange afterburner or afterburner orange or something, which is cool.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that I was able to sample that was delicious. If you went into my Instagram feed, you might be able to figure out who it's with. And that's all I'll say about it.
Like on your feed or like in your stories? I'm not even sure if I understand the difference between those two things.
Don't worry about it.
Well, here, let me follow you on Instagram. So what's your user handle?
I don't have Instagram. I'm not on Instagram.
He's on the Insta. I know you are.
On the Instas.
At Ryan Mickler.
All right.
Oh,
come on, let's get into questions. Nobody cares
I see this
about
post, this really dangerous post of this dad almost running over his small son in a Power Wheel. So dangerous.
Oh, boy.
So dangerous. Funny. Oh my goodness, people.
Look, that's the distinct, but that was a woman, and I actually don't, I'm not mad at her. You know, she's like, oh, that's cute, but it's dangerous. Yeah, spoken like a woman.
Yep.
And look, I'm not saying that negatively, by the way. Yeah. That's your job, to nurture,
her job
to support,
is to make
to
sure
love,
he's
to make
safe.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And women are more inclined to be, to seek after security by their nature. Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Men are more inclined to take risks by their very nature. So this is why men and women, and I said in the post, I think, men and women are complementary, not competitive. Like, we're not competing against each other. We're complementing each other. So
totally.
Yeah.
To read that post and others, go to Ryan Mickler on Twitter and Instagram.
There was a funny comment somebody made, and I was hesitant to share it because it sounds so sappy, but I'm like, the more I think about it, I'm like, that's interesting. Compete is basically the same word without L, which stands for love. So complete. Oh. And I'm like, that sounds totally sappy.
It does.
I'm like, that's lame. But when the guy wrote it, I'm like, that's so lame. I can't even like get excited about that. But I'm like, that's interesting. It isn't. It's not compete. Yeah. What is the difference? Love, right? Cooperation. I care about you. It's care, right? I care about this individual.
Yeah. And then you complete. Yeah.
And then, exactly. That's what it is. You complete.
I kind of do.
So you work together. I kind of do too. You're way more sappy than I am, but
for sure.
Whatever.
I'm going to use it tonight.
Can we erase that?
Talking to the wife. I'm going to talk to the wife. I'll be like, you know what? I think we compete sometimes, but I now realize you complete me because that L, when we add love to us competing with each other, it completes us.
I regret saying anything about that. Cody, if
romantic.
You're listening to this podcast as our podcast editor, please delete this out of the podcast.
You assume Cody even listens. Just joking.
I do assume that. I mean,
yeah,
I pay him to listen, so I do assume he
better
does.
be. Yeah.
All right, let's go.
All right. So these questions from the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, our exclusive brotherhood, go to orderman.com/Iron Council. First question, Tom Tuff. What do you both, you, Ryan, and you, Kip, want to be able to say about your life when you're 90?
This is easy for me. So easy. I've thought about this a lot. That I tried everything that came into my mind. That's it. Like, not that I did it, or did it, I should say, not that I did it successfully, not that I completed it, not that I was this huge miraculous success, but that if I had an idea or a thought or some
You went for it.
passion, man, try it. Give it a shot. See where it goes. And if you only do it once and you hate it, cool. If you do it once and you fail, if it sounds interesting, go back. But the biggest thing for me is that if it comes to mind, I owe it to myself. And frankly, as a spiritual man, I owe it to my creator who planted that thought in my mind to pursue that to some degree.
I like that. Probably not the best advice for every guy, because some guys have stuff in their mind come into their mind and they should not be acting upon it.
Yes, but look,
but for
let's use
Mr.
some
Mickler, it's totally
here.
okay.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I have thoughts that come into my mind that are not thoughts that would be suitable for this podcast, especially considering some of you guys have your young sons listening. Okay,
Yeah.
but surely in the age of social media and distraction and short attention spans, our audience is capable of the discernment that the most of the population is not. So, guys, I'm not giving you a free pass here. Okay,
I said try anything comes to my
anything.
mind.
He's ordered a man.
Anything.
This is what we do. Exercise some discernment. You know what the hell I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't be dumb. Proceed.
At 90, I'm assuming I'm almost dead. And so I'm just going to push this to what do I hope I'll look at my life, and it's not have regret, which is a flavor of yours. I don't know if it's so much if I'd have regret, like I never tried that, but I don't want to have regret as in I wasted my time. I want to feel like I lived a complete life. I took advantage of the opportunity that was presented to me, and I didn't waste it on things that were trivial, right? And I dedicated my life enough to something that is impactful to my family and those I love. So regret is my number one thing. I just don't want regret.
I like it. I mean, you
which
really
is
just stole
for me
mine, so.
not acting on my thought process is how I don't
Good
have
point.
regret.
That's a good point. That actually might be more mature than my level of thinking. Do everything. Do it all. All right.
Good
I like
times.
it. Next
All
question.
right. Evan Berwick, how do you diversify your information pool so that you guard against confirmation bias? Also, do you have any podcast recommendations that are led by women? I'm looking for more diversity.
Okay, so the way you diversify it is the answer is in the question. You just diversify it. So if you hear a conservative talking point, you find the counter argument to it. If you hear about, this type of workout, then you research other type of workouts. The answer is quite literally the question. So it's very important that you search for that. But there's one little tactic that I've used and I've employed, and this actually makes a lot of sense in light of, and this has gotten people riled up because I made a post about it on Instagram earlier today. In light of Trump's tax records being released, I don't want to get political here. All I want to say is just wait a second. That's it. Just wait a second. All right? Let it filter through the media. Let it filter through the socials. Let it filter through all the processes and places that it's going to filter through. And then you can make your decisions. I'm guilty of it too. We all are. But we hear one little thing in the media or one little thing in the news or one little thing on social media, and we get all hopped up and riled up and bothered. And then 2 days later, we realize, well, that actually wasn't the story at all. Like, here's the new information. We see that with things from racist claims to criminal activity to tax documents being released, and everybody gets all emotional and all hot and bothered, and they bicker and they bitch at each other. And then 2 days later, something comes out, and it's like, oh, everything I just got upset about wasn't actually accurate. So if you're going to be intelligent and you're going to try to be thoughtful, like I assume most of the men here are, don't take the bait, guys. That's what it is. Don't take the bait. Just detach, all right? I realize there's a lot of things going on right now that might infuriate you and frustrate you. don't take the bait. Just look, it's a bright, shiny object, and there's somebody up there throwing that bait into the pond. You're the fish, and they're throwing it in there. Are you going to be the one, the wise fish, that kind of looks back and says, something off about that a little bit? Or are you going to be the young, little immature fish that sees it and bites it just because it's bright and shiny?
Totally.
Just wait. Exercise some discretion. Exercise some discernment. Put it through the 48-hour, the 72-hour test, and try to curb the emotions, think about it rationally, and just chill out for 2 to 3 days. And then, okay, let me revisit this now. That actually leads into the next point, and this is not so much politically related, but it could be, is we don't chase fads. All right, we don't chase fads. Look at diet, for example. There's keto diets. I don't know if you remember I think it was called the HCG diet, if I remember correctly. This was years ago, maybe 7-8 years ago, and people would give themselves a shot, and then they would
human growth hormone, like HGH.
It was. I think it was called HCG diet. I can't remember, but they would give themselves a shot, and then they would starve themselves, and then there was the Atkins diet before that, and then there's keto and paleo and this and that. It's like, hold up, all right. Humans have been on the planet for, and this is arguable here, in our current form for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Homo sapiens, for hundreds of thousands of years. What are the odds that in the next, in the last 3 years that we've developed the perfect formula for human potential?
So, perfect example of that is cereal. How did cereal start? Because grains and heavy carbs for breakfast was deemed like necessity and healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know,
how did that work out?
know, look, if you're being objective, that box of Honey Oats or even Raisin Bran or even worse, Lucky Charms, come on.
Yeah.
You don't need to look at the
peanut
label.
butter Captain Crunch. I mean, that's probably okay.
That's safe. Count Dracula is coming up for Halloween. You're safe with that. But everything else, Count Dracula and Fruity Pebbles. Now, I will not eat Trix, and I'll tell you why I won't eat Trix. A very little known fact about Mr. Ryan Mickler. I must have been 8 or 9 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. I had a bowl of Trix. I'm eating my Trix. I'm in the living room watching, Saturday morning cartoons. I take a bite, put it in my mouth, eat it. I look down, and a freaking spider crawls out of my cereal bowl. I will never, ever eat Trix for the rest of my life, ever.
It was the spider for sure. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it was whoever made that cereal that got the spider in there.
No, it was it wasn't a fake spider. It was it was like a daddy long legs, and he was crawling out of the bowl. I can't. I find Trix repulsive because of that.
That's funny.
Speaking of like conditioning. Anyways, what was the question?
Diversify.
Just be level-headed, guys. Just be level-headed. Don't be stupid. Don't be overly emotional. Just level-headed, detach, go to the woods for a couple of days. Then when you come back, if it's still going on, okay, maybe there's something to this. Let me evaluate it.
Yeah. I would like to add 2 thoughts. One is anyone that's a professional at what they do, you realize that it's always complex. The answer is always, it depends, right? Like if you know someone that specializes in nutrition, their answer isn't, it's keto. No, it's like, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you doing?
No, I
What's
know,
this?
but
What's
look,
that? Right?
I'm going to let you keep going on this, Kip. I'm going to let you keep riffing on this.
But
I actually don't agree with you.
Okay, all right.
And let me just tell you why I don't agree. And then I want to tell you, I'm going to give you what you can defend here. It's not complex. Just eat healthy, all right? Eat your meats in moderation, eat your fruits and eat your vegetables, and drink lots of water. Okay, that is the answer for 100% of people. But continue, and you can debate that point.
Okay, well, and maybe I shouldn't use nutrition as the example, but the point is we simplify everything. And when we come to a conclusion quickly, I think that's a sign of lazy thought process and not thinking it through. So when I hear, Trump doesn't pay taxes. Oh, well, hold on. Like, what's the details? What's the information? What's the timeline? Like, trust me, there's more data to the scenario. And most things in life aren't as simple as ripping troops out of the Middle East and bringing them home. It's not that simple. There's more things at play. There's repercussions for the decisions we make. And so I think a great way that I like to diversify my understanding of things is don't be so quick to come to a conclusion. Breonna Taylor gets shot. Racist cop shoots woman in bed. That's the narrative. We have all heard that narrative. And then we just immediately hold on to it. Well, what's the details? What's the information? But yet we don't do that because I think most of us are too lazy to actually just don't come to a conclusion and realize there's more information to everything. And we shouldn't be so quick. And I'm trying not to say the word too quick to judge because you should be judging, but coming to a conclusion quickly could be really dangerous. And we should realize that sometimes things are a little bit more complex than we realize. So I
do agree.
It's a good example, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes, totally. I don't think we're all that. I don't think we're off at all. I think what people tend to do is they tend to shortcut, and we tend to be very tribal, right? So look, if you were on my
group
team,
says this,
right, and if you were on my team, Kip, even if you did something stupid, I'm still going to defend you because you're on my team. And so I'm going to try to make sure that, you're okay and that things are taken care of. And so that might mean that I need to lie to myself a little bit or distort the truth or withhold something because you're on my team and I got to protect you. And so we become so tribal that, conservative, Christian, atheist, non-denominational, libertarian, liberal, it's that's the camp I fall into. So I can't question. Right. I can't question at all. So I like what you're saying. The thing that I wrote down here is having a healthy dose of pessimism, and not just towards the other side, but towards everything. Quote unquote your side too. Yeah. So my wife and I, one of the things that we'll do every couple of days is we'll have lunch together. We'll sit down, and usually when we have lunch together, we sit at the kitchen table and we'll throw on Tucker Carlson because I enjoy what he has to say.
And the dance after that.
And then the dance, right? But what dance are you talking about?
Garth Brooks.
Oh, okay. I'm just making sure you're not talking about something else with my wife and I here. So we listen to Tucker. Now, come on. Let me just stay on my point.
I'm sorry, man. I'm in a joking mood.
I can see that. So we'll listen to Tucker. I actually make a conscious effort to think about where I don't agree with him. I'm like, no, I don't agree with that because of ... I have to do that as somebody who wants to be as objective as possible. And look, I understand I have my own biases. People say that on the socials. Oh, you're so clearly biased. Yeah, obviously, I'm a human being. You're biased too. We're all biased. Yep. I consciously do try, believe it or not, to make an effort to say, okay, well, why don't I believe that? Even if it's somebody on my quote unquote team. I'm not so worried about the team as much as I am just getting the right information and making sure that it's going to serve me and the people I care about.
Totally. And news outlets are not ideal for not coming to your own conclusion, right?
Well, we ought to just stop using the term news and journalism. And I'm talking about CNN, MSNBC, Fox. I'm talking about all of it.
Yeah.
And just entertainment. That's all it is, entertainment.
Totally. And one of my favorite examples, and we all have examples, but one of my favorite examples is I was living in New York, and at the time we had family in Utah. Oh my gosh, do you hear the news about there's a mosque being built at what Ground Zero, right at Ground Zero, and people are upset about it, and they're protesting because it's insensitive or whatever, right? Despite the fact that it's hey, freedom of religion, guys. But regardless, it had some hype around it. Asia and I were I don't remember seeing a mosque back down there. So we go for a walk. And we figured it out. It's 4 blocks away, and it's in a community center, and it's a prayer room on the 4th floor, right? And it's oh my gosh, this is the prime example of just complete BS, clickbait, a narrative. I mean, it's just a perfect example of that. And so I take everything with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to news, right? You just got to there's more to it. There's more to it. There's always more to it.
Well, and then actually read the articles that you're looking at, because entertainment outlets, we're not going to call them news outlets anymore,
I love
entertainment
it,
outlets
actually. Yeah.
are so good at picking the right titles for their articles. And you read it and you're like, wait,
That title doesn't even line up with the story I
this
just
doesn't have
read.
anything
Yeah.
to do with. So actually, this goes back to your point about being lazy. Actually, read it before you pass judgment on it. Just read it.
Yeah.
That
Versus
actually will
share.
go a long ways.
Yeah. Versus share.
Oh yeah, this person hates everybody. And then you
Yeah.
read it, and it's like, oh, they just had an argument with their mother-in-law or something, you know? And it's like, that's all it was. Anyways, all right, keep going.
Totally. Yeah, it makes me. Are we going to keep going? What makes me wonder about the Spotify and Joe Rogan? Right.
Oh, there's
I hear
more
this
to the
news.
story, of course.
I know.
There's
I hear
more
this
to
news
the
like,
story.
oh, Spotify employees are boycotting Joe Rogan or whatever. It's like
Joe Rogan sold out. This is that. It's like, hold up a second.
How many employees? 2?
Yeah. Yeah.
3 employees? Like, what's the details?
Right.
Right? Like,
I don't
no
want the
one get-
details.
yeah.
That's lame, man. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
get outraged if I have the details. That's boring. You're
All right.
boring, Kip. You look for the details and you try to be level-headed.
I know. It's so weird. All right. With all the trackers, goals, plans, etc., one can easily become. Wait, I should read off his name. Gabe Carrillo. Gabe, I know I pronounced your name right. So
2 L's? 2 L's?
2 L's.
Carrillo.
Carrillo. I'm feeling good about it. All right. With all the trackers, goals, plans, and etc., one can easily become goal and results oriented when the real goal is to be better, not just do better. How does one keep in his heart in check and know that he is going for good processes, deep relationships, and a still mind versus using these to attain the next goal? Or is there a balance, a dichotomy, and etc.?
So there's a scripture. I don't know what scripture it is right offhand.
Ah.
I'm not a scriptural
Preaching now.
necessarily. No, but it's true, and that's why the scripture is so powerful. Whether you agree with the spiritual undertones or not, scriptures are powerful.
Principle.
It's all principle.
Yeah.
By their fruits ye shall know thee. How do you know? Is it producing good fruit? That's how you know.
Yeah.
And if it's producing good fruit, then odds are it's a good system or it's a good process or whatever it is you're engaged in. If it's producing less than favorable results, then you know that that's not a system or process that should be working for you. And that's why it's so important in the planning process that you actually go back and review it. Most men don't do this. And if they have a planning system, it's all focused on goals, like Gabe said. It's all focused on goals. It never gets into tactics. It never gets into strategy. It certainly doesn't cover the review and process of it. So you need to go back and you need to ask yourself, is this serving me? I think about that about my activities. A couple of hobbies that I'm really engaged in right now. Obviously, we talk about jiu-jitsu every week, right? Very engaged in that. Is that making me a better person? You're damn right it is.
Yeah.
I'm stronger. I'm more capable. I feel better. I'm more fit. I'm certainly more patient. I can deal with adversity better. So that's a good practice. The other one that I'm super engaged in right now, just because I have some hunts coming up, is archery. Every single day for the past, I would say, 2.5 to 3 weeks, I'm out there shooting my bow. It could be 20 arrows. It could be 100 arrows. But every day I'm out there. Is this making me a better person? Yeah, it is. It allows me time to think. It allows me time to focus on the task at hand rather than distraction and learn how to be present. But then it also makes me a better provider. So those are systems that I'm interested in incorporating right now. Now, truth be told, after my last hunt, as of right now, I might have some others come up, but as of my last hunt in November, I will probably not be practicing archery every day. Because it's just not, at that point, it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to dedicate this time to something else because it was just a season, right? Hunting season. That doesn't mean I'm going to let the practice go by the wayside. There's other people who, Cam Hanes is a perfect example. He's practicing every day all year long. He's running not so he can be a marathon runner, but so that he can be a better hunter. And that is meaningful and significant to him. So when he reviews and asks himself, because people say all the time to Cam, oh, you don't need to run that much to blah, blah, blah. No, you don't technically need to, but that's what he wants to do. Who are you to tell him that that's not serving him or working him closer to his goals? You know, maybe instead of worrying about him so much or somebody else, you ought to worry more about what you're doing and how it's serving you. So I like experimenting with different procedures and different processes and different hobbies and activities. And then I'm very quick to say, you know what? Not interested. I don't like that. Like I don't have any sort of misconstrued or misperceived sense of loyalty to a certain thing I've tried. Like just because I try it, I don't feel compelled to continue it. Try something like, oh, that actually worked. I'm going to keep doing that. Or, nah, I didn't feel it. I'm going to move on to something else. But by their fruits you shall know thee. And that goes for human beings and it goes for processes and systems as well.
Yeah. What I like about that is know, that term, to know he. What is that? What is know? To know someone. And to know them has to do, I think, with how they are being in life. Some goals are focused on our circumstances, right? It's like, oh, okay, you know, better my circumstance and improve my finances or whatever. But if how you show up in life is a jerk, then guess how you are known? As a jerk.
Right.
Right. And so it's who we are in spite of our circumstances. It's who we become as a result of us accomplishing our goals or taking after our tactics, not just completing them.
Right.
And
there's hints too, right? In everything that you do, there's hints. You know, there's that old adage that if a woman's going out with a guy and she's mean, he is mean to the waiter or waitress. Excuse me. I can't say those terms anymore. The server. Because heaven forbid I attach a gender to it. The server. Yeah. Excuse me.
The server.
Well, even that's bad. What are you saying? The servant? No. I'm just saying the person, the individual.
Yeah,
the non-binary individual, the human being. No, I can't say that because some people identify as lizards, right? It's the entity that is giving you your food and taking your order. Is that okay? All right. If the guy is rude to that entity, then they're probably not a nice person.
Yeah.
All right. It's going to leave little clues. The processes and the people you spend time with are going to leave little clues. And that doesn't mean that we don't lose ourselves sometimes. You know, sometimes I'm short with my wife. Does that mean I'm an asshole by definition? No, it means I was just being an asshole in that moment. But there are little clues that you need to be keenly aware of that will paint the accurate picture. Well, again, whether we're talking about people or we're talking about processes and systems that you're incorporating. There's little clues, and that's why you want to follow successful people and do what they do, because they are leaving the clues. When I started the podcast, I invested in courses and programs that taught people how to podcast, not from people who'd never podcasted before, but from people who were successful podcasters, because they leave clues behind. It's like Hansel and Gretel, little breadcrumbs, right? That show you the path. And that's what you need to be in tune with.
Totally. And I think that's why what's important is that those visions are not just about results, but it's how you are showing up. At least for me, that inspires me of, you know, I talk about like in my vision of how I show up in spite of circumstances, and my personality is part of that description, not just I have lots of money and I do this. It's like, no. That's not really in the grand scheme of things. Back to the conversation we had earlier, or the question earlier about when we're 90, a lot of that is about how we show up in life. Yeah. Right. And so you want that defined as well in your vision. And for you guys that need assistance with vision, with objectives and with tactics, this is a perfect segue to bring up Battle Ready, which you guys can look into at orderofman.com/battle ready. It's a 90-day program that will kind of guide you through that entire process. So,
Kip, I knew there was a reason I wanted you to be my co-host. And a year and a half, 2 years later, you're starting to actually realize that vision of mine.
Finally. Yeah.
You are really, really good at segues and transitions, I got to say. And it's impressive. Yeah. I was impressed right there.
But you like call it out, and now it's like not authentic. And it's like, you know.
That was true. Really good. It's still really
truth.
Good.
Yeah. Sign up.
It is still truth. You know, I was thinking about that as you were saying who we are in moments of difficulty. So this morning I was rolling with my son because we go train 2 days a week in the morning. And I was rolling with him, and he was exhausted. Like he was beat down, and him and I were doing an 8-minute round, and he was like,
Flying around.
I'm just exhausted. And I could tell. And I said, stop for a sec. So we stopped, and I said, are you tough? Like, do you think you're tough? And he's like, yeah, I think I'm tough. And I said, how do you know that?
Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, how do you know you're tough? Because it's easy to be quote unquote tough when it's easy, when you're not tired, when you're 100%. But does that mean
just
you're
walking around? Yeah.
Right. So does that make that alone make you tough? It's like, I don't know. I said, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make you tough. What makes you tough is when you're tired and you're beat down and you've got submitted and you're discouraged and you don't want to do it anymore and you still do it. That's toughness. Toughness requires adversity. It's not the absence of it. It's the presence of it and you still overcoming it. So I need you to be tough for 5 more minutes because I know you're tired. But this is actually when it counts. And this is actually when you get to prove yourself. But you can't prove yourself unless you get to this point. And he did really good. I was proud of him. He did really good. He stepped up to that challenge and that conversation. And he proved that, yeah, he was a little tougher than when he walked into the gym in the morning. He walked out a little bit tougher because he proved it to himself.
Love it. All right, George Sykes. How does a man set about reinventing himself when he realizes the version of who he is no longer working? Not asking for a friend.
Thank you. I hate that phrase. Asking for a friend. No, I know it's a joke. I get it. All right, you're being funny. I get it. Look, you guys know me. I'm not a funny individual. My wife is like, a lot of times she has to explain jokes to me because I'm like, I don't get it. She's like, you're too boring. You're too literal. Like, you'll never understand jokes. I don't get a lot of jokes because I'm like, what does that mean? I don't understand. This one, I know you guys are joking, asking for a friend. No, you're not asking for a friend. It's okay to ask for yourself, guys.
Yeah.
This is how we grow. We ask for ourselves. So, George, I appreciate that you say you're not asking for a friend and that you generally acknowledge that you're asking for yourself. This is good. All right. What was the question? How do you transform?
Reinvent yourself, right? Like the way you are is not working. Like, how do you get to this point of reinventing yourself?
Look, you already checked off step number 1. Acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Like too many guys won't even acknowledge it because they know what comes after the acknowledgement is the hard work.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I know it's bad. I know this is not working. I know I'm miserable in my job. I know I'm overweight. I know I'm in debt. I don't want to talk about it because I know if I talk about it and actually quantify it, then I'm going to have to do something about it. So George, you're at the point now where you already took the first step. You're already on the path. So here we go. Buckle up because you're on it. What I would say, and I hate to be, trite here, but what I would say is the battle plan is the way. You recognize that it's not where you want to be. I say this all the time. And guys, it's not a cop-out. This is why we've developed this system, because it works. It's proven to work for thousands and quite literally thousands of men. That's really interesting, to think about. For thousands of men, they're better off because of the system that we've developed and articulated over nearly 6 years now. So you've acknowledged who you are is not where you want to be and how you want to show up. So the first question, or the first step now, so I would say this is step 2, you've already acknowledged it, is to begin to identify who it is that you do want to be.
Vision.
Because it's right, vision. It's not enough to say, I don't want to be that guy anymore. Because then what we do is we create a vacuum. Right? I don't want to do this activity anymore. Well, okay, good. Keep going. That's not a complete thought. Keep going with it. And the next thought is, instead, I want to be this guy. And now we give ourselves a point of reference, a North Star. Something to aim towards. Step number 1. Okay, I want to be that guy. Now, how are you going to do it? How exactly are you going to do it? Well, in order to be, I had a guy email me this morning and he said, Ryan, I've been going through your Battle Ready program and I want to get fit and I want to be a good husband to my wife. And I said, I appreciate that. That's a noble thing to say. It's just not specific enough.
Yeah.
We all want that. Of course, I would think. You know, we all want to be fit. We all want to have a good relationship. We all want some money. We all want that. So what does that mean? And how exactly will you begin to quantify that? So if George says, I want to be healthy. Cool. What does that mean? Does that mean you're capable of running a marathon? Does that mean you're capable of deadlifting a certain amount of weight? Does that mean you're a certain body percentage? Does that mean, like, what exactly does healthy mean? And by the way, the reason the battle plan works so well is because I'm not telling you to change everything about yourself. Because how could you do that? You know, how could any man who's ever lived look at all of the inadequacies that he's acknowledged and recognized in his life and change all of them in the next 90 days? You got to be in this for the long term. That's why vision is so important. It's like, who do I want to become? And that vision changes, right? It's like a mirage in a way. And I hate to paint it this way, but it's like you're in the desert and you're thirsty, but you keep walking because if you don't, you'll die. And you see this oasis out in the distance in the desert. And you're like, oh man, if I just get to that oasis, right? And you walk and you walk and you walk and you finally get to where the oasis was, and the oasis has moved. Now it's 200 yards more. And so you got to keep walking. This is a lot like our vision, right? Our vision is this, but you cannot possibly see what your vision is beyond it until you start to realize your current vision. And we do that in 90-day segments. So I want to be healthy. That doesn't mean that you're 10% body fat, you can deadlift with the best of them, you can run a marathon, no, it doesn't mean all of that. All it means is that you're going to lose 30 pounds this quarter. Or if it's financially related, you're going to pay off $5,000 in debt this quarter. You're not going to be debt-free this quarter, but you're going to be $5,000 closer to being debt-free. Vision. Work yourself backwards into 90-day objectives that push you beyond your comfort zone. They can't be comfortable, because if it's comfortable, you would have already done it, right? So you're already doing what's comfortable, which is overeating, paying for things you can't afford, being lazy, participating in activities and behaviors that aren't serving you. You're already doing that because it's comfortable. It's got to be something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And then what you do, now that you have the metric, the 90-day metric that's moving you towards your vision, is you do something daily that works you towards accomplishing your objective. So if it's lose 30 pounds, life is easy now because all you have to do, two things. All you have to do is exercise for 45 to 60 minutes per day and not eat any food after 7 p.m. That's it. Well, that's not big enough, Ryan. Cool. In 90 days, if you do that, then you can get better and you can mature and you can have more lofty tasks and object. That's fine. In fact, I would encourage you to do that. So maybe it's now you're not just working out for 60 minutes a day. Now you're doing like specific training based on what you want to accomplish. And it's not just not eating after 7. It's cutting out all processed foods out of your diet altogether. These are 90-day segments. And then you have to track it. You have to track it. You can't have any hope of improving or creating a system that's guaranteed to work if you aren't tracking it on a daily basis. Did I work out for 60 days? It's a yes, or 60 minutes. It's a yes or it's a no. It's a pass-fail. It's not a grade. It's a pass-fail exercise. You either passed or you failed. That's it.
Yeah. And often the pass or failure of that is reason, I think. Where
what do you mean?
You need to be unreasonable. Because guaranteed there's going to be a scenario where it's like, yeah, but I skipped lunch and we had date night and whatever. And so I'm going to eat past 7. Like literally you have to be like, let go of the excuses, stop using those excuses and those reasons for you not honoring your commitment.
Right. And look, here's the thing is there has to be consequences to your decisions. So again, I'm going to go back to me and my oldest son rolling this morning. He got caught a couple of times in the same thing, in the same move, over and over again, like 2 or 3 times. And I kept doing it to him. And I said, look, Breck, does that hurt? And he's like, yeah, I don't like that. And I said, then stop doing the behavior that's leading you to this result. Because I would drag his arm across and then I would turn sideways. And I did it like 3 or 4 times in a row. I'm like, does this hurt? He's like, yeah, it hurts. Do you like it? No, I don't. Stop doing that behavior. Is there any guesswork at this point, Brecken, as to what happens when I do this? No. And yet you keep doing that behavior. There has to be a consequence for your decision. So to take your scenario, Kip, that you were talking about, I didn't eat lunch and I did this, and we come up with all these excuses. That has no relevancy in what you said you would do. And if at 7 p.m. you're hungry because you didn't eat lunch, maybe tomorrow you'll think about eating lunch.
And learn.
Give yourself a painful consequence. In this case, it's not painful. It just means you're going to be hungry for the evening. So what? Everybody can deal with that. And then tomorrow you're like, oh, I was really hungry by 5 o'clock yesterday and I didn't eat lunch. So I'm going to actually bring some snacks to food or to work today. Right. This is what we call maturity, evolution, growth. But you can't have growth if you aren't willing to put yourself in painful circumstances and scenarios. Yeah. Like if you excuse it, I didn't eat lunch, so it's okay that I eat at 8 o'clock. Well, no, your goal was to not eat after 7. Period. Full stop. No justification after that. And then tomorrow you'll make better decisions because you were hungry today.
Totally. Do you think that most guys believe that they can reinvent themselves? Like George uses the term reinvent. I actually like invent. Like you can create, like that you are the creator of yourself. But do you think people really believe that? Or is it this like lipstick on the pig?
I think for most people, reinvention is too lofty.
They just want to get a little bit better, and they think that's all that's possible. They may not even think that they can really truly invent themselves.
It's just a lie. It's a deceit to themselves. It's like, okay, let's just say, for the sake of argument, you're 400 pounds, and you're like, I want to reinvent myself, and I want to be a marathon runner. All right, how long do you think it would take from the thought process of I want to be a marathon runner to you're 400 pounds overweight? There's no way you'll ever be able to do this. How long do you think that would take for that thought to pass through your mind?
Not a day.
Unless
you're Goggins. Yeah.
60 seconds. I mean,
you're going to immediately second guess yourself.
Almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what if you said, okay, you're 400 pounds, and you said, I want to get up early tomorrow morning and do 10 push-ups and walk around my yard. How long before you talk yourself out of that? If you were really convicted, I don't think you could ever talk yourself out of that.
Yeah, it's simple enough. Anyone could do that. Yeah.
But then the opposite guys will say, but that's not good enough. A guy who's 400 pounds that wants
not
to lose
lofty
weight,
enough.
It's not big enough. Bullshit, man. That's better than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And also
and
there's
you get
tomorrow.
some confidence. Yeah.
So look, I'm not saying that you should take the easy route. I'm not talking about participation trophies here, because you're actually better than you were yesterday. And then when you do that, you're going to feel good. You're going to be like, man, I've never done that before. In my entire life, potentially, I've never done that. And I did it today. And then you say to yourself, okay, well, I did 10 push-ups and I walked around my yard. Today I think I'm still going to do 10 push-ups, but I'm going to do 2 laps around my yard. Because I felt okay. I could do 2 laps. And you do that. Now you start stringing these together over 100 days, 90 days, 365 days. And all of a sudden, you're not 400 pounds, you're 300 pounds. Or better.
Yeah.
And you feel good. And you're not just walking around your property. You go down to the high school and you're running 3 miles every single morning. And it's not that you can do 10 push-ups. You can actually do 100 unbroken push-ups. Not because you went from point A to point Z, but you went from A to B, and then B to C, C to D, and so on. And that's what we need to focus on. That's why I can't remember, I don't think it was George, I think it was Gabe, is that right, who asked the previous question? Is it so important not to focus so heavily on the result, but on the process? Yeah. Win the process. The results will take care of themselves, guys. They will. They will take care of themselves if you win the process today and tomorrow and so on.
Yeah.
Win the process.
And if you don't mind me adding just really quick, it's like, what's the goal? Like in the grand scheme of things, you could be overweight and lose weight, or you could be a guy that always honors his word and does and follows his commitments. To be honest with you, the guy that's committed to doing something and is on the path is actually a more honorable guy, regardless of his weight.
Mm-hmm.
So like focus on the kind of man you are being, and the results will happen. Don't get me wrong. And I know we want to like have measurable results and then tackle things, but like in Georgia, and I don't know if this is George's take, but like how George shows up as a man is what's more impressive, is what's more valuable than really what he accomplishes, in my opinion. Now, and because that's how you're going to live a fulfilled life.
Well, you know, and
those results will happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Let's take a couple more.
All right. James Sherman, best advice for raising a girl as a man alone.
I would go back. I don't want to answer this question because I want to get to a different question. The only reason I say that is because we have given a full account of this. I did 2 podcasts, and it must have been probably a year ago at this point. One is called Raising Kings, and then a week later I did one called Raising Queens. So go to orderofman.com, type in Raising Queens, or you can go to your podcast player, Order of Man, Raising Queens, and you'll find, I want to say, 10 strategies for raising her right. And I think that will answer the question in depth as opposed to what I could do here. And
would you say, Ryan, the recommendations that you give on that episode make no difference whether you're raising it as a single father or a married father, that those are still applicable just the same?
Oh, they're still applicable. Now, I don't know if again, it was probably a year ago. I don't know if I got into the specifics of raising her as a single father, but certainly still applicable. It's going to be universal. You just might need to be more creative, you know, with your scenario and your situation of being a single father. But the principles are still going to apply. Perfect. All right. Eric Rolio. Sorry, Eric. All right. Rojillo? Is it Rojillo? Rojillo. I don't know. I can't see it, so maybe. Rouleau. Maybe we shouldn't be spelling these because now everyone definitely knows that I'm pronouncing them wrong. Can you guys just do the phonetic, spelling on these? That would really help us. Thank you. Maybe change your name. Yeah. All right. My son is 9. He just got his 90-day battle planner for kids from the Order of Man store, store.orderman.com. Another great transition by you, Kip. Well done. Thank you. Thanks for calling that out. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Is like when people are doing good, you're supposed to acknowledge that they did good? I don't know. Or is it just patronizing at this point? Yeah, probably patronizing. Fair enough. Okay. I'll remember that. His schedule for exercise: school days, run 1 mile in the morning, preferably outside. Take Taekwondo Monday through Wednesday. Thursday, 30 push-ups. Sometimes will be burpees. 20 pull-ups, 30 Superman jumps, 50 to 60 sit-ups. Weekends, he will do a circuit training and MTB. I don't know what that MTB is, or a hike, and he'll do some weights. Once a week, we will throw in 100 burpees or 100 incline sit-ups. What are your kids and Kip's kids doing? I don't know if I'm having him do too much or not enough. Any suggestions? He's very good at school. Yeah, I've got some suggestions here. This is that was funny. The 90-day battle planner for kids. Okay. This is not the 90-day battle planner for dads to do it for their kids. I don't know if this is the case, but I'm just going to throw this out there, and maybe I'm completely wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong on this, bud. It sounds like you created his battle plan for him. I don't think he created that battle plan. He needs maybe I'm wrong. I'm just thinking based on what I've seen. It sounds like you created the battle plan and you said you should do this. Or even if you sat down together, you kind of pushed and manipulated and pushed him into this. Because I can't. How old is he? Did he say how old his son is? 9. He didn't create this for himself, man. Okay, so Your job is to help him create his own plan. I think, I don't know your son. Maybe he's a badass. He very well could be. It just sounds daunting and overwhelming, and he might burn out. And that was actually one of my fears when I created the kids. Well, I say I, but my son and I created the kids battle planner. Is there's 6 things that they need to do every day, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, is this a lot? And it is a lot. So as a father, you need to figure out where your son or daughter is, because this will work for your daughters as well. That goes back to the previous question.
Yep.
You need to figure out where they are, age, maturity level, advancement, all this stuff. And, maybe instead of doing all 6, and I actually wrote this in the planner itself, and it's on the video that my son and I did together, is maybe you just pick 3 of those things instead of all 6 of them. But you have to, I leave that to you based on what you think they're capable of. So the risk in doing that, well, the upside is if he does it all, he's going to turn into a badass. But the greater risk is that he doesn't do it, and he doesn't enjoy it, and he burns out, and he thinks you're a jerk because of it.
And a failure on his notch, right?
Yeah. Jocko talked about this in the second or third interview that we did together. You take a guy like Jocko, and he's intense and he's hardcore, and you guys all know this. These are things that you know. And he talked about how hard he pushed his son and how it actually created some problems. And he's even, somebody who's hard like that even decided, I got to step back and I got to make this fun. Because if it's not fun, they're just not going to do it. Another example of this as an adult, as a mature man myself. So I'm rolling with Pete the other night, Pete Roberts with Origin the other night. He's my instructor. He's a black belt. He's phenomenal. So I'm rolling with him the other night, and I noticed that his style changes based on my style, based on how I'm performing. And I also noticed, because I was watching him one day, that his style changes based on who he's rolling with. Yeah. And at first I was like, oh, he's just adapting to who he's rolling with, and that's how he's going to be better. And then I asked him, I said, no, I don't think that's what it is. I asked him, I said, how often do you change your intensity, your style, your pressure, your play based on what the other person's doing? He's like, I do it all the time. Every person I roll with. And I said, why? Okay, I understand that because I acknowledge that. I see it. Well, why do you do that? He's like, so they can get better. The way that he's talking to me, the way that you need to get better, me, the way I need to get better, Kip, would be different than the way you need to get better. So he's going to go harder and differently with you than he is with me. Yeah. That's very fatherly, actually, if you think about it. Yeah. Right? And some people say, you do a pickup game of basketball with your kids, and you just wreck them. You just dominate them. Well, look, how often are they going to come back? I mean, Jordan Peterson's talked about this in rat experiments, that because rats will roughhouse, and there's always a bigger rat and a smaller rat. And the bigger rats know this. Rats. That the bigger rat needs to let the smaller rat win some percentage of the time. And I can't remember, it was, 10, 15, 20% of the time. Because if not, then the smaller rat won't come back to play, and the bigger rat won't have anybody to play with. So it actually serves both rats for the big rat to ease up and let the small rat feel good occasionally about how they're performing. Rats know this. Pete knows this. We as fathers need to understand this. I'm never going to let my kid win because bleh. No, hold up. Maybe you don't need to let him dominate you, because then it becomes patronizing, like we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe you ought to ease up a little bit so they can develop and grow and get better and just push just past their comfort zone, not completely cripple them and crush them into the dust that they are. It's like let them mature. And I think we might be bumping up against that a little bit right here in this scenario. That's what I feel anyways.
Yeah, totally. All right. A couple more? One more?
Yeah, 1 or 2 more. Yeah.
All right. Jordan Shink, when it comes to starting a business and building a brand, what are some strategies you use to build your brand and gain a passionate following? Do you use daily tactics to accomplish this versus some things you do weekly?
Yeah, I mean, there might be some things, like a daily tactic might be, I'm pretty much at this point working on a podcast every single day. you know, whether it's this podcast or an interview that I have, or an interview that, you know, I'm putting together the intro and the outro, or doing some editing on, or the Friday field notes, or the thing I'm doing with Warrior Poet Society. Like at this point, I'm doing that stuff every day. I'm checking emails every day. I'm posting on social media every day. Those are things that just, without question, they just get done. And there's other things, and I use my battle planner to do this, that, you know, they're just a weekly thing. Hey, I got to call so-and-so, or I got to schedule this appointment, or I got to do my taxes, or I got to work on this or work on that. So it's really just dependent on what needs to get done. But the way you know what needs to get done is based on your objectives. What is it that you're trying to accomplish, and what is the priority, and what is most important? But I really want to focus on that first part of that is what, and I don't know if it's the first part, but how do you gain a passionate following?
Yeah, build your brand and gain a passionate following. Yep.
Because that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that everybody gets wrong, because here's what most people want to do. I want to appeal as broadly as I possibly can and cast the widest net that I possibly can so that I have this big pool to draw from. That's a mistake, because if I were to do that, if I was to call this, for example, order of human beings, it would not nearly be as impactful as calling it order of man. And what a lot of people will think is, well, didn't you just cut yourself off out of 50% of the population? Yes, by design, I did. Because the alternative is to cast a wide net and then not appeal to either men or women.
Yeah, like half
so
the
now I'm not
content
appealing
wouldn't be
to
valuable
anybody
anymore. Yeah,
right. Because it's so watered down and it's so just boring and mundane and not specific that nobody cares about it. So you got to take a hardline stance. You got to know who it is you're trying to serve, and you have to be willing to ostracize a few people. You don't do that by design to ostracize people, but it's just a natural outgrow of what you should be doing. Now, the interesting thing and the ironic thing about this, and I'm just learning this now, is that as we've developed Order of Man over the past nearly 6 years, we have a large percentage of the people that follow who are women. And you know what kind of messages I get from women? I really like what you're doing. I really respect that you're talking to men. I've introduced this to my husband, to my children. This is so valuable. Or occasionally I'll get the email that says, you know I'm not a man, but I'm doing your Battle Ready program anyways because the information's so valuable. And I will never say, on this podcast, the Order Man podcast, you'll never hear me say, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. That isn't to be dismissive of the ladies who are listening. It's just I speak to men. If women feel like they can gain value, they're welcome to. In fact, I love that they're here. But I speak to men exclusively. I talk to men. The tone of voice that I use is masculine. We're talking about masculine subjects and issues, and that will always be the case. If a woman doesn't like that, doesn't appreciate that, can't handle that, then she's welcome to go find her own podcast that's going to be more suiting for her. Or if she can be mature enough to realize that, oh, there's some things I can extract from this, and she wants to continue to listen, by all means. But I ain't changing anything. So the question you need to ask is, what is it that you stand for? And who specifically do you want to serve? Oh, I just want to help people be successful. Good. Who? Everybody. Nope. Wrong answer. Who? Fathers. Okay, cool. Mature fathers, young fathers, first-time fathers, fathers of multiple children, single fathers. Who specifically? And narrow it down as specific as you possibly can, which sounds counterintuitive. But if you want to get your foot in the door, which is what you want to do as you're starting a new business, you got to find the point of entry. The door is not wide open. All right, it's not.
Yeah.
There's a little sliver, and you got to stick your foot in there. And once you wedge your foot in the door and you make a dent, then you can kind of weasel your arm in there, and then your shoulder, and eventually you're through the door. It's not going to open itself for you. You've got to find the point of entry, and it's little, it's small. And you do that by being specific on who you want to serve, what you stand for, what you don't. And you know what? Every time I make a polarizing statement or a comment, I can't show you because it's past. I was going to show you on on my stories. On Instagram stories. I made a post the other day about, what was it? Oh, it was about being a biological male in order to be a man. Like being biologically male is a prerequisite. People lost their minds. And that day I lost net followers on Instagram. I was like, that's weird. I lost followers. And so at first I was like, oh, that sucks, because you don't want to, like, you're trying to grow your business or your influence. So I'm like, that sucks. 2 days later, I wish I could show you. I have the screenshot on here.
I saw this. Yeah, it was crazy.
I got to pull it up because you guys got to see, because this is illustrating perfectly the point that I'm making. I'm going to pull this up because I think I've got it in pictures here. Hold on.
Okay.
Because you just have to see it. And this is the power of, okay, here it is. I got it. This is the power of speaking a message and being hyper specific on it. So you can see on Monday.
Yeah, you dipped right before.
That's right there.
Yeah.
You can see that right there. And then 2 days later, look at that growth. 2 days later, huge growth. This, guys, is the power of being specific, of knowing your message, of speaking to a specific group of people. And if other people don't like it, you have to be okay with it. And it's definitely not comfortable because people are challenging me all the time. It's not comfortable, but it's a requirement, because if I want to get my foot in the door, I got to find that path of entry. And it's, like I said, it's small. You just got to get in there. Does that help?
Got it.
Do you think that helps?
I think so. Yeah, drastically. And
I
and
want
I think
people to do that. I want people to start businesses, and I want them to share their message. But I'm so sick of these watered down messages. Like, like I see a tweet or something. It's like, everybody should just be happy. And I'm like, well, that's lovely, but nobody cares about that.
Yeah. I also, as a resource, I think the Story Brand, the book, The Story Brand, is actually a great reference.
Is that
in regards to creating a
Donald
passion?
Miller? Don Miller?
I'm so bad at referencing authors, but it's a good book because, I mean, if you think about it, is we have a tendency to market ourselves as the hero, and no one hires you because they want to be the sidekick and make you the hero. They want to be a hero, right? And that's really the premise of that book is, how do you market in a way that they can be the hero, that they can be amazing, and that your service is the sidekick to them to help them be the hero in their own story. And that's kind of the premise of it. And that's passionate. That's, you're driven. And you can even look from a business perspective. It's like, you sell IT systems. Yeah, but the objective is making the IT director highly respected within his organization, right? To make him the winner. Right. That drives passion. It's like, I want that for myself, right? In my organization. So I think that's a great book.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's probably on my list of things I want to get, but I haven't purchased that book yet, so I'll have to check it out.
All right. One last question. You want to go for this one?
More? Sure.
All right. This is a good one. I actually, after I skimmed this, I thought, well, I'm going to want to wish I prepped for this a little bit, but we have Ryan here to make sure we got some good content. All right. Reps Arnhart. I am a firm believer in the saying that boys will be boys. They will act wild sometimes, but where is the line? I feel guilty for taking my son to be evaluated for ADD or ADHD. I'm sitting in the waiting room as I write this, and I can't help but feel like I'm robbing my son of his wild heart.
Well, boys will be boys. That's true, but they shouldn't remain boys.
Yeah.
Right? So your job as a man, as a father, is to teach him how to be a man. So it's okay to afford him some grace when he makes an immature mistake. That's what they do because they're immature by their very nature. Your job is to help teach them how to grow and evolve out of that immaturity. I would say the line is when it becomes dangerous or destructive for them or somebody else. If they're getting into some situations where, and ADD is a great example of this, is it just that they're hyper, that they need to be outside, that they need to be, engaged in an activity? Because if that's what it is, go ahead.
Well, I can't help but think of Eric's son doing all those exercises and thinking, I'm wondering if Eric's 9-year-old is hyper, right? Like after that workout. Probably not, right? Like he's probably a little bit more calm because
he's gassed. Yeah,
totally.
So is it just that they're hyper and that needs to be harnessed? Because I think with men, that's what it needs to be. Is like, okay, good, you're passionate, good. Let me, as your father, show you how to harness the passion to be able to produce effective outcomes.
Yeah.
Or is it that he's a danger to himself and other people, or that he's incapable of learning and growing because of his characteristics or his attributes? That's the line. Is it serving him or is it hindering him? Because if it's hurting him, and he's a danger to himself and others, or it's hindering him from growth and expansion and learning, okay, well, then I think it's important that you address that. But it's just, if it's inconvenient for you or you don't understand it, and that's why you're doing it,
you don't have the time to deal with it. Yeah.
Yes, that's different, right? That's a bit of a cop out, actually. And that actually might, the path that you, and I don't know, I'm not passing judgment because I honestly don't know. But that's a path that you might be walking down, is that this is not easy or convenient for me, so let's see if we can make this easier on all of us. Is it ultimately going to serve him? Maybe it is, based on where he's at, and maybe ultimately it's not. It was just more of a convenience for you. So I think you're doing the right thing by having some real soul searching here. Odds are, I think this is probably what's going to happen. You know, he says he's in the waiting room right now. Odds are that the doctor is going to give you a low dose or a mild prescription of some sort of, Adderall or whatever it is, whatever they're going to give the kid, because that's just what doctors do.
Yeah.
So, and look, here's the thing, guys. Just because a doctor gives you a prescription, you aren't obligated to fulfill it. So I would actually, if it were me in my situation with my children, none of my children are on any sort of medication for that, like that kind of thing. I would try exhaust every available option before I pumped them full of meds. Totally. Even if that meant hanging on to the prescription for a few months, or the prescription expiring. I'm sure they do. I don't know for sure, but I'm sure prescriptions expire. And then having at some point to go back in and say, look, doc, I never filled this prescription because I wanted to do these few things over the next 6 months. And, it's not really helping. And so I wanted to see if we could revisit this. But the doctor is not in charge. You are in charge. And so you don't need to fill the prescription. See what they have to say. If I were a betting man, I would place my money on that doctor giving you a low dose of some sort of medication that's gonna sedate him to some degree.
Yep.
And I'd be very careful of that. But maybe there's some other options. Maybe he just needs to be. And even now, like, we're in the midst of COVID. I don't know your kid's school situation. I don't know if he's homeschooled or if he's sitting on a computer half the time because he can only go to school half the time and he can't see his friends and there's no competitive sports. I mean, there's a lot of other factors at play. And so, of course he's antsy. You're antsy. I'm antsy. Of course. So find a way that maybe you can burn up some of that energy and engage him in a way that he needs right now in the absence of some other outlets that he's been accustomed to as he's grown up.
Totally. There is statistically, not that everything's about stats, but statistically the amount of kids that are diagnosed as ADHD that probably don't need it is actually really high. Do the research. So that already tells you that the probability may not be that he needs it. The second one is I can't help but see the correlation between delayed gratification and perceived ADHD. Like, let's really think about it. Like, and in fact, I had this conversation with my wife just the other day. It's like, our son's having a hard time concentrating. What training has he had around how to concentrate?
Good point.
What training have we provided him to help him clear and calm his mind and focus on something? It's really interesting if you think about it. There's training for all kinds of things, but we never train our kids to focus. So and back to your point, Ryan, it's like we're raising men. Well, guess what? Eventually he should probably learn how to do that. So exhaust the circumstance. What can we do to help Timmy or whoever learn how to concentrate, how to harness that focus in a way, how to have delayed gratification? This is really boring. Yeah, it is totally boring.
It's boring.
Yeah. So let's experiment. How do we do something that's boring and keep with it and keep doing it and then have a reward? Oh, okay. That felt good. Right? Like there's been so many times with my sons, I've heard this, where we work all day long and at the end of the day they go, you know what? I was having such a bad day earlier today, but now that the day's over and we got all that done, it feels really good.
Yeah, man.
And you're like, yeah, It does, doesn't it? Now, of course, we had to yell at you all day long to keep working.
You're like, I don't feel good now. I could use some drugs right now, but I'm glad that you're okay.
Yeah, but they're not going to learn that, right? If it comes to like, I'm bored and I don't have a good time, that's part of learning. It's part of learning.
I like that. I like that. Foster that attention span. I mean, we have video games and social media and phones and distractions. We're actually conditioned not to focus. You know, the other thing too, you got to consider is like, okay, well, what's the subject material? You know, a teacher calls and says, hey, your son can't concentrate. If I were to ask, well, what are you studying? And they said something like, I don't know, 13th century Mesopotamian history. Like, well,
or how good of a teacher are you? You're like, let me ask you a question. How good of a teacher are you? Are you boring?
Yeah, this is more a referendum on you than it is my son.
Totally.
Come on now.
I should have to drug the whole class just for them to listen to you.
You know, so like consider the subject matter. It's like, okay, well, yeah, no kid likes that. So like, what can we do to spice it up and to make it fun? You know, how can we make this because they have to learn it, right? They have to, some of these things they have to learn math. Like I would say math is pretty important. So like, how can you make it fun? Like, totally. I don't know, maybe you're outside doing archery and you're measuring out your course and you bring your son out there with you with your targets and you're like, okay, I don't know how old the son is, but you know, you mark it off and it's like, okay, 50 yards. And if you want to go 75 yards, how many more yards do I need to go? 25. Yeah. Good. Okay. Mark it out for me and then place a stake out there. And now you're learning, but it's all cloaked in doing something fun with your dad. And he's outside. Go ahead.
Yeah. And let me ask you this question. Do you use those strategies still as an adult?
Yeah, of course.
I do.
Yes.
I do it all the time. I'll gamify something in my own mind and go, okay, I'm going to last 5 more minutes or I'll see that post. I'm going to go as hard as I can until then. Or I'm doing the same strategy that was used on me as a kid as an adult to push through something I don't enjoy.
You know, I remember sitting in math class and learning the Pythagorean theorem. Do you remember that? A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
I'm from Sevier County. I don't know if we
covered that. We actually learned, well, it's not much better, but I learned the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, right?
Yeah.
You know that.
Okay, I know. I didn't know what it was called, I'll admit.
Maybe that's what it's called. I'm like 80% certain that's what it's called. Somebody's going to correct me if it isn't. So I'm like, I remember sitting in class as a high school student thinking like, when am I ever going to use this? I'm never going to need this. And then I was out, this was years ago, I was out building a doghouse for one of our dogs. And I used the Pythagorean theorem when I was figuring out the pitch of the roof.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, I could sit in a classroom and like slave over this stuff, or I could go build something. And you know what? It's stuck with me because I built it, not because I remembered the formula. And that's how boys learn. So to give you a couple of resources reps on this, and Kip, I know you're advocate of this as well. You have it, The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell.
Has a whole chapter on ADHD.
Whole chapter. There's 2 other books I would give you. Number 1, so again, The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell. Why Gender Matters by Dr. Leonard Sachs. And Boys Adrift. And I would say the first and the third book, Boy Crisis and Boys Adrift, also by Dr. Leonard Sachs. Those are 3 great books that will really help you understand the phenomenon of attention span, learning for young men, why the school system is stacked against young men, and what you as a father can actually do about it.
Yeah. Great resources. And I can't help but like think of Jocko sharing stories while going through Spuds. Spuds. Sorry.
Come on, that sounds like baby Navy SEAL training. What the hell is Spuds?
Baby Navy SEAL training. That's funny.
It's for young men who want to become Navy SEALs. Before they go to Buds, they go to Spuds.
Go to Spuds. Oh man. All right, can we X that? Let's X that one off the podcast.
No, we're leaving that one,
man. But he talks about gamifying it himself, where he's like, okay, this is really miserable, but now my job is to do so good that I piss off the instructors, right? Or no, it was Goggins.
That's Goggins. That's taking souls, man. That's the taking souls concept.
But that's him gamifying it, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to get my mind off of the horrible pain and suffering of this whole thing, and I'm going to make a game out of it. And now my game is to bother them. That's what this is. It's strategy, right? To something that's not enjoyable.
I can't stop laughing about Spuds. No, I'm just thinking,
man, it's never going to end. It's never going to end.
I actually like the idea. I'm like, man, because I'm a marketer at heart, Kip. All right. Like, I love business. I love marketing. I love taking ideas and being like, okay, what can we make of this idea? And I'm like, what could I make of Spuds? Like, Spuds. I could have these boys that Reps is talking about, and I could have these guys bring their boys in, and I could hire like 10 SEALs, and we'll just call it Order of Men Spuds.
Spuds training. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I'm dying over here. I think what you said was really good. It was just hard for me to take my mind off Spuds. Okay. Taking souls. You were talking about taking souls.
Yeah. But I think Jocko even talked about that at one point. Of like, he changed his game. Yeah, gamifying it. So.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we get so wrapped up in the moment that we're like dreading it, and we throw ourselves a little bit of a pity party, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, get out of your mind. Like, think about something else, gamify it, do whatever you need to do. Tell yourself you're taking souls, whatever you need to do so that you can drive on and carry on with the mission.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cool.
I think we're onto something, Kip.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of
that a little bit.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, let's wind things down. I think we went a little longer than normal, but great questions. Did we get through all the Iron Council questions?
No.
Oh, okay. So we'll answer the rest of them next week.
We have about 3 or so. So
cool.
Submit your questions. Join us online, facebook.com/group/orderman, or you can join us in our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council. That's where our questions were fielded today. And of course, we talked a lot about plans today. That's something that we do in the Iron Council, where you're assigned to a team. You're working shoulder to shoulder with other men, holding each other accountable. It's kind of like it's the elevated version of Battle Ready. of Battle Ready. But if you don't want to join us in the IC and you want to go solo, learn more about the Battle Ready program at orderofman.com/battle ready, as well as Spuds.
Those are 2 great resources. Obviously easy for me to say we created them, but like if you want to go on your own path and you want to figure this stuff, we've got the resources all free and it's all there and available. So totally. Yeah, do it. Guys, great questions today. Really appreciate it. Kip, as always, I appreciate you. Man, this was a really fun conversation, and I think we're getting the guys a lot of good information. So we'll be back next week, guys. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.